The 2018 Infiniti Q70L is one of these rare unicorns that didn't sell a whole lot, but on the used market these days is a fantastic value. You get a lot of car for well under $20,000. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the exterior, the interior, take it for a drive and see what it's like out on the road, as well as talking about the kind of fuel economy you can expect, and also the pricing and how it compares to the competition. And also huge thanks to #1 Cochran Honda of Johnstown for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. And so about the Q70, well, this traces its roots back to the old M37, M56 of the early 2010s, and then it got a refresh in 2015, so it gave it the new look. It picked up the Q70 name along the way, and then we got in 2015 also the L version. So this is the Q70L, which has added 6 inches or so to the rear doors in the rear seating area and stretched the actual wheelbase of the car to make this what was previously a mid-size sedan into the same kind of length you get from the full-size sedan competitors in the luxury space. We're talking the BMW 7 Series, the Audi A8, the Mercedes S-Class, stuff like that. This is very similar in length to those with a much lower price tag, even new, and especially on the used market here. It's a really nice alternative, even though many of those have also depreciated a ton. You get Japanese reliability, you get the lower maintenance costs, the avoidance of all the over-engineered stuff that the Germans like to do, and you get it in this very attractive package, I have to say too. So right up front there, you have this really curvaceous front end, which you really don't see much of these days. Everything is so sharp and has these creases everywhere. This is just curvy and flowing, and really nice headlamps. They're kind of inspired by the Q50, and a very nice front bumper with the grille really inset there, and again more curvature. But the hood is what I really love, how it rises up to meet the fenders here. I mean, it's like scooped out, it's like dished out. I mean you could make an argument this would be kind of a Batman inspired almost thing here, especially in black, just with how bulbous the whole thing is. It's just really cool. And this one especially, a great combo. We got black with black wheels, the black dark window tint really makes this thing look mean and also very classy at the same time, and just looks really great. Also, this one we're looking at here is the 3.7 liter V6. There is also the 5.6 liter V8 engine available in these, which is fantastic, but today here we have the V6. But here for the later model years, you're able to get the V6 paired up with the Sport package, and also put the Sport package on the L version. Earlier model years you weren't able to get that, but by 2018 you were able to get all the nice features of the V8. And so that Sport package means that coming down to the sides here, you have 20-inch wheels, which look great, and they're also having these larger brakes here, 4 piston brake calipers, I believe 14-inch rotors up front here, and some really attractive looking 20-inch wheels here. Now, if you didn't get that Sport package, you'd go down to 18-inch wheels, which would probably give you a better ride. The Sport suspension's a little firm too, from what others have said. We'll test it out once we hit the road here in a few minutes, but the 20s look great though, for sure, especially standing still here. You have the nice little badge there on the sides to help you know what engine you're looking at here. I also really like how you have like that chrome strip running across the bottom there for these side skirts, and I mean you can see how exaggerated the proportions are with that extra 6 inches of length they added to the rear door. They basically just stretched that rear door, stretched that wheelbase, but that's where it all goes to. You don't get any extra room in the front. It's all just about a really spacious back seat to try and bring this up to par and be a real competitor for those full-size luxury sedans. And then going out to the back there, you have those very kind of signature tail lamps that Infiniti was doing at the time, and but again, a more kind of curvaceous trunk lid and bumpers, and just one of the last really, because a lot of the others really started going slab-sided around this time. And so I love that we still had some of this older styling that I think has actually aged very well. And I think that even though this design is actually like a decade old at this point pretty much, it still looks very modern, very attractive, and just very cool. So overall, it really stands out too. The extra length gives it extra presence, and these L versions in particular really look quite prestigious. The interior of the 2018 Infiniti Q70L is very impressive in some areas, and in other areas it's a little bit behind where its competition was back in 2018, but you know, now here in 2025, I mean, this is actually still a very nice interior. So anyway, first thing, sitting down in these seats, you have these perforated leather seats that are heated and ventilated. And my understanding is that Q70s didn't have that for the V6. You didn't get all of those features. It was usually leatherette, and you didn't get the ventilation, I don't think, either in the earlier years of the Q70L. But by 2018 here, I believe they all had this premium package, which basically gave you everything. It's easy to verify that, you know, just by seeing, you know, whether or not you have the stuff that's in that package. But the premium package did, you know, upgrade you to the leather here. And, you know, the heated seats work well. I haven't tried the cooled seats because it's a pretty chilly day here, but really nice and soft seats too. And they just have the usual lumbar adjustment. It's not quite as advanced as some of the seats some of the competitors had back in the day, but really like these seats. No complaints at all. Moving on to the steering wheel here in the Q70. It's a very nice and, again, curvaceous wheel here. And you know, has a great 9-3 grip, nice little 10 and 2 notches. Just a few buttons here on it. It's a little interesting with the lack of symmetry with having the volume stuff on the left and then totally blank on the right here, but it's a very nice steering wheel. The only other odd decision is that the heated steering wheel button is all the way down in this button bank, and it's actually quite a reach. So you like reach way down, almost like you're popping the hood to go and put your heated steering wheel on. Don't love that button placement. There's plenty of other buttons. It's unfortunate they couldn't find a space for one more button there for that, but otherwise, at least, you know, it's great you have a heated wheel. That's, again, part of, again, this upgraded premium package, and but yeah, it's nice and toasty and very nice to have. Now, moving on to the gauge cluster here. So that is one area where this, you know, had fallen behind some of its competition by 2018, where you just had analog dials. Now in 2025, with a lot of people being burned out by screens, you know, this may actually be a perk, which is kind of funny how those things change. But, you know, so you just have the really nice large analog dials that actually look very attractive with the fonts and the detailing of them and stuff. Now, you don't really have too much info. You just have that tiny little, it's not even a full color display, you know, it's just kind of a black and white display there, which gives you very basic trip information stuff. And again, by 2018, Audi had done, you know, full digital gauges and, you know, some of their larger stuff especially, and, you know, you would have had a lot more of that. So this definitely would have been a dinosaur in 2018, but again, these days you may actually appreciate that. Now, moving over to the middle of the dashboard here, you have, first off, up top, you'll see the Bose speaker. This has a 10-speaker Bose stereo. Again, that was one of the upgrades here for these higher trims that you got, and I haven't tested it a whole lot, but there's a variety of audio sources you can use for this, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But first off, this screen here. So you have an 8-inch touchscreen, and touchscreen was notable still in 2018. I mean, some others did have touch, but it wasn't a given. You do have a controller still here for it if you want to use that, because it is a bit of a reach for the touchscreen, I'll say. It's really far set back in there, but it's nice you had the touch capability just to make it a little easier so you weren't forced to always use this little controller. And the screen doesn't do a whole lot either. So another deficiency here is that it doesn't have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. That was something other competitors were doing by 2018, and so that is just another shortcoming here. This Infiniti screen and other Infinitis, I do know there are aftermarket solutions, and I think even Infiniti offered an upgrade for the other models to put in CarPlay. I don't know if that's available here for this. I don't know too much about the actual software and the system it's running here, but maybe there's a way to do that. If nothing else, you can always take that stuff out and put in your own system or something if you really want. But anyway, this system though is pretty nice and high resolution. It's an 8-inch screen, which is fairly decent even by modern standards. You also will see that's where you're going to see your climate controls reflected in there, and some of the other basic stuff. It did have a navigation, but that was also behind for the times. But having the map view and all that is nice, and again, this is one of the ones you're not buying for a high-tech experience. If you want that, going over to many of the other competitors is going to be the way to go. This is more about being old school. It was behind the times, but I think, again, these days that could actually be a perk. And even fun other old school touches, like you have the little analog clock there between the air vents and lots of buttons. And again, another thing these days I think people will really love, you just have all kinds of button shortcuts for the infotainment stuff. You have volume and tune knobs coming down. You have a disk drive CD player here. You have, some other shortcuts here for radio presets, all the great stuff we took for granted for decades and decades, and now, you know, we don't really have in modern stuff here. But and I also like the curvature to this. Again, curvature is really the theme for this entire vehicle, outside and inside. You know, it's almost like a piece of furniture or something with the way this is curved, like a chest of drawers or something almost. And then you have, you know, the sweeping lines there going over the dash, and it's very, again, just sweeping into the doors is curvy. Everything is curved. I don't think there's a single straight line in this whole interior, and I'm very happy about that. It's very cool. But anyway, coming down, you also have a very nice leather shifter here and metal. And that's the other thing, the metal trim in here too. You have it, you know, around the shifter. You have even, you know, metal for your door pulls here, which is very impressive. And just all the plushness you have in here. The doors have all this plushness, and also this wood. You'll see this is real Japanese ash wood here in these, so this isn't some cheap knockoff. Like, no, this was the top thing really for Infiniti, especially as far as sedans goes. And so, you know, this was a legitimate effort with real metal, real wood. You even have some nice soft padding down by your knees, which is something that a lot of competitors, even in modern times, still don't do. And I love padded knee areas, especially for long trips when you have cruise control on and stuff. Resting your knee up against there is really nice. And anyway, you also have your drive mode selector here, your heated and cooled seat controls with their little switches, and you also have some other remnants of old school eras with, you know, a basically cigarette lighter and you know, ashtray kind of size space here. And then you also have these two cup holders with a nice little cover over them. And then you have the center armrest, which has some padding to it. It's not as plush as I was expecting, considering how plush everything else is in here. That might just be something that over time has hardened up or something, I don't know. Also, it's a little squeaky. Everything else in this is actually pretty solid, but this is definitely squeaky. You'll probably get some squeaks with most of the other competitors as well, but, you know, just one thing where this is definitely showing its age as well. But anyway, you open that up and you'll see a two-tiered thing here with a nice little tray at the top, and then a, you know, decently sized cubby here. It's fairly deep and large, and you will see a whole variety of stuff in here. So you got two USB-A jacks, you have an auxiliary jack, you have I believe that's an audio source for like a AV cable. I don't know what that's there for, but you have that as an option, and you have your actual regular power outlet there as well, and the SD card slot, which I believe only does the maps. But you know, nice to have all those hookups, and you know, the ability to have, you know, the USB and the auxiliary jack helps to modernize this. You also do have Bluetooth audio streaming still too, so you have that for a wireless connection. But lots of ways to, you know, get your music through here, even if you don't want to pay for a satellite radio, which also came in this, or you didn't want to go back to CDs. But lots of options there, which is great to see. Now, moving on to the back seat here in the Q70, especially the L version here. Again, you get an extra 6 inches of legroom. And Q70, you know, probably wasn't best in class in the time, but, you know, wasn't terrible either as a mid-size sedan. And then this is huge. So I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself. I have, you know, full hands with, you know, stretching my hands out as far as they go. That's how much space I have back there. It's a very spacious back seat, and even in, you know, 2025 times, that's right up there with basically what you get in regular full-size sedans these days. Some might even be less, honestly. So fantastic amount of space, so comfy back there. And also the seats are nice and plush. So it really just feels like a nice, comfy old sofa you're sitting down in, really. And you also see whenever they look forward, they have their own air vents there. And what I have to think is originally another cigarette lighter back there. And then also, like, another fun thing, relic from that time period is, you know, in the doors, you still have what is basically an ashtray. There's no other use for that pocket. It's too shallow and too small for anything else. And so, you know, even in 2018, a little bit too recent to have, you know, so many ashtrays in this vehicle, but that's you know, again, it's from an old school time, and yeah, this was clearly behind back then, and you know, again, now it just has a charm all its own. But you also will see there's no pockets in those doors, really, so not really any, you know, places to put things back there aside from the gigantic footwells. But you also will see whenever you flip down the rear armrest there, it's interesting that you have a ski pass through. The rear seats actually do not fold down at all, which is kind of strange. It's the first vehicle that I've recalled in a long time where you have no folding rear seat. But you do have the ski pass through, which strangely locks too. I don't know what the thinking was, why we needed a lock there, and why that was worth spending the extra money to install a lock for your ski pass through. I'd love to know the story behind that decision. But anyway, you will see your cup holders there and also your heated seat controls for the rear seats there, which was, again, one of those higher end kind of things that you only got on the premium packages, and I believe only on the V8s for a while, but then trickled down here in these later years to that V6 as well. But a really comfy seat. Now, headroom is the one thing, though. It isn't quite as spacious as I was expecting, considering how bulbous this thing is on the outside. You know, again, me being 5'9", I still have a couple inches of legroom to spare, but if you are tall, you'll probably be most comfortable if you have long legs and a shorter torso. If you're the opposite, you know, it might actually, you know, not be super comfortable, because I just kind of was expecting a little bit more headroom in the back there, but I'm sure it'll be fine for most people. And then moving on to the trunk space here in the Q70L. That's, you know, unchanged really, again, because again, all the length went to the back seat. So trunk is going to be the same as a regular Q70, which is a pretty good sized trunk though. I mean, it's pretty wide and long, but also very tall. And you can even fit some small carry-on luggage like standing up in those in that trunk area there. So I mean, it's pretty well done. Now beneath the floor, you also will see a spare tire, which is very much appreciated. Yeah, so just a really good amount of trunk space. But let's start up and go for a drive. The Q70 here uses the same key Infiniti used for, I don't know, probably more than a decade, honestly. But just the nice little metal buttons there on it. And it's a nice and small key, even if it's not, you know, super expensive feeling. But no complaints. It is, of course, keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off here in the 2018 Q70L. So the first thing you notice about this vehicle, I think the first thing that I notice is that, you know, you do have decent visibility, but it's not the best. You have pretty nice large side windows, and view forward is pretty good, but you have this really chunky A-pillar area with, you know, you have this air vent in the A-pillar, you have the speaker here at the A-pillar. You just have a lot going on right there. I mean, you're usually going to be sitting up high enough that you can see around it decently well, but I still am like finding myself even on this corner here just peering around it, and it's just a little bit in the way, I will say. View out of the back though is totally fine, so that's good. And other things here though that I'm really enjoying are, you know, you have all the more traditional feeling stuff that, you know, we again took for granted back then, where you have, you know, nice and responsive throttle. Brakes also have a nice amount of dead travel to them, and it's a stark contrast from like some of the Germans where you have a really touchy brake pedal. There's a lot of travel, so it's very easy to be smooth with it, so that's nice. Steering has a fairly nice weight to it. There's not a lot of feel through it, but at least the weighting is pretty nice, and so no complaints there. But I'm going to go ahead and put it up into the sport mode here, and let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it accelerates. And here we go. Okay. I thought it was going to give me the downshift. I think we started in second there possibly. But this thing, as you might have noticed there, it is a rever. So the Q70s here, including the L, for this 3.7 version, use the 3.7 liter V6 engine, the VQ motor of, you know, 370Z fame and all the others, you know, G37s, all that. That's what you're running here, and that's a fantastic motor. It's a reliable motor, and it's a rever. So here in this application here, we've got 330 horsepower, and it makes peak power at 7,000 RPMs. That acceleration run I just did, we went to 7,500 RPM. Really unheard of in this segment, and that is very cool. You had 270 pound-feet of torque, so not a ton of torque there, and 0 to 60 was about 5.6 seconds, and all that stuff is less and, you know, more slow than what you get in most of the other competitors, I will say. But if, you know, you're not trying to win drag races in your, you know, luxury vehicle here, which I'm assuming you're not, it's a plentiful amount of power. It's a nice sounding V6, and again, it's reliable and uncomplicated, with many other competitors at this time period going for turbocharging, downsizing, all this kind of stuff. This was, you know, very nice to have. And if you wanted more power, there was the 5.6 liter V8 engine that did, I think, 416 horsepower, and that's going to give you a 0 to 60 time that's, you know, probably a good bit quicker. This one we have here has all-wheel drive. That was an option. You could get these with rear-wheel drive, of course, as well, but another little acceleration here. Yeah, it's just a real nice, smooth accelerator. I really love that about it. And pitching it into a couple of corners right away here. It's so smooth. So it also runs through a 7-speed automatic for all of these, and that's really nice and smooth with its performance so far as well. You don't have any paddle shifts or anything. It's just, you can use the slapstick thing and go up and down on the shifter if you want, or you can just let it do its thing, which I think is probably gonna be the better way to go. But nice little tight corner here coming up on. Interesting. Okay, so it's interesting the way this is tuned. So there's a little bit of an understeer kind of feel. It doesn't bite super well up front there, and then it starts to turn in. So the interesting thing though, first off, I'll say this vehicle's on some kind of knockoff tires, because lower cost vehicles typically, whenever they need new tires, that's the way many people go. I think a tire upgrade would really help. But also, just from the factory, these only had 245 wide tires all around. Even on this sport package, we got 20-inch wheels with this little skinny 245 wide tires, relatively speaking. Most of the competitors would be 255s, some maybe even wider than that. So, this isn't, again, going to be the most dynamic, even with this sport package. Now, the nice thing with the sport package, like I mentioned earlier, is it does slow everything down with bigger brakes. You have 4-piston brakes up front there, 14-inch rotors. Then you have 2 piston calipers in the rear with 13.8-inch brakes back there. So really, solid brake setup here in these, so that's good, and it contributed to some very good stopping times, even though this thing was fairly heavy. I think the carb weight for these was just under 4,200 pounds, if I remember correctly. So I mean, it's weighty-ish, but again, in 2025, 4,200 pounds doesn't sound too bad for something that's a full-size luxury sedan, pretty much. I can't say that I'm really complaining about that either here. And nice corners here, and everything's pretty nice and flat. And at least this road is actually pretty nice as far as the surface here. But the suspension doesn't feel too busy or jittery or anything like that. Some others complain about the sport package being too stiff. Maybe it will feel like that eventually. I don't know, but so far, it's just carving up these corners really nicely, very smoothly. It's just sweeping corners this thing really loves, and it just feels really good. And the traction control there, I sensed a little bit of wheel spin in the back, and it cut back. So it's still a little slow. It's one of the old school kind of traction control systems where it's like, uh-oh, there's a problem. Let's kill power and then figure it out and hope that the problem goes away. And that's kind of, I think, the rationale here for this traction control system. But sport mode, though, does also give you, some more responsive throttle. It does weight up steering, I think, a little bit as well. But, the 7-speed is okay. I think I keep coming back to, I wish the transmission was a little more eager to give me downshifts. I wish it was just a little more assertive. Everything just kind of is a little more relaxed in the setup here. That's okay. It's just, and this was a complaint many people had back whenever these were new, was, it's a great cruiser, but even with the sport package, it's not going to go toe-to-toe with the top sports sedans. And I think even Infiniti honestly knew this, because although, the Q50 had the investment of adding in the twin turbocharged V6 in those with the 3.0, and also with the, Red Sport 400 horsepower version and stuff, they put a lot of work into the Q50, but the Q70, they kind of just let it die on the vine here. And I think they knew that enthusiasts would go for the Q50 and didn't need the gigantic back seat. And I think that, they just kind of relegated this to being a nice cruiser. And that's okay, because, not everyone wants to have a sports car or a sports sedan that's, igniting the passion of driving within them. It can just be a nice cruiser. And so I think, especially if you go into this car with that kind of mindset, if you want a nice cruiser with a nice sound, a good motor that's, still over 300 horsepower, it's not like we're in something that's slow. But, if you go into it with that kind of a mindset, I think you'll be very happy with this. And again, especially if you're super focused on comfort, you're probably going to want to go for the non-sport package with the smaller wheels. But, again, I really have no complaints here with this as it is. It's still, a very nice driver, even with this sport package. And now we're on this little bit of a rougher road that's generating some more road noise, and you hear some of it, but it's fairly subdued. And again, this is probably not quite as quiet as, the top German luxury sedans or something, but, still very nice as far as just the isolation here. And again, it's still soaking up, even on this rougher road, soaking up all the bumps very nicely. And, a really nice cruiser. And you know, if you are going into this with the mindset of you don't need to have the fastest thing, you just want something comfy, if you don't need the L, the regular Q70 actually came with a hybrid system available, so you can get actually pretty good fuel economy, or better fuel economy at least than the regular V6 here and the V8. But you could, you know, get that hybrid efficiency. Now those are probably extremely rare. I think Q70s in general are very rare. The L is even rarer, and then, you know, to go for the hybrid system, probably extra rare there. But if you can find one, probably a really cool combo, and then you get all this comfort with even better fuel efficiency, especially if you live in a place where you do lots of stop and go driving. Speaking of fuel economy though, it's also worth mentioning, if you really do want that V8, you don't really pay much of a penalty for it, surprisingly, which I guess either says the V8 was very fuel efficient, relatively speaking, or the V6 just was not. But you only lose 1 to 2 mpg in all the metrics going for the V8 over the V6. I believe both motors require premium fuel, or at least it's recommended. So I think even that's a wash there. So, you know, there's probably not much reason to skip the V8. If you can find one of the V8s, you know, I mean, it is more front heavy, so I think this one will be slightly better balanced, but again, you're not buying this probably to be a 1010 sports sedan. Either way, great sedans all around. But the final thing to mention as far as, you know, this efficiency that I'll briefly touch on is fuel economy here. So these are rated at 18 city, 24 highway, and 20 combined. Got a nice tight corner here. Try and push it a little bit more. Okay. It's willing to boogie with you, that's for sure. It still, you know, makes an effort and does try to, you know, give you that fun. Man, I love this motor. It's happy to rev all the way to 7,500 too, even though peak power is at 7. It just gives you the last 500 for fun, because it's always fun to have a high revving engine, in my opinion. So that's great. Yeah, I mean, there's really not much else to say as far as how this drives. Of course, you had an independent rear suspension in the back. You had this platform that, again, largely carried over from the M37, which I think is also part of why, you know, this wasn't going to be the best handler or the most refined chassis or anything, because it was really old as far as the bones underneath go, really. But again, they dressed it up nicely with the refresh for 2015. They kept it modern enough to be a nice option for those, again, looking to save some money over the, you know, more popular competitors. The one other thing to mention here is the driver assistance technology here, which there wasn't really a whole lot of here in this. Now, you did have park sensors here on these higher trims, and you do get a 360 camera, which is a very nice thing, especially in 2018. That wasn't very common, so it's very nice to have that. So parking this very much assisted, but as far as driving goes, there's not really much going on here, again, partially because of its more dated platform and nature. We don't even have adaptive cruise control. I mean, adaptive cruise is something that, you know, had been around for quite a while at this point. You don't have that, at least not equipped on this one, and there's nothing here. There's no lane keep assist or any of those other things, which, again, you were starting to get some of that stuff here by 2018, so not unheard of to expect that. But just know that this doesn't have any of that stuff. I don't believe we even had automatic emergency braking in this at this point. So just, you know, on your own, old school style. And you know, you don't even have blind spot monitoring either. So I mean, it's all really, I mean, those are things that blind spot monitoring is nice to have, and that is one thing I can complain about, is kind of a sore exclusion to not have that. But you know, if you're someone who, again, wants a more old school kind of feel, you don't need all those nannies and assistances, this might be perfect and actually be better as a result of that uncomplicated nature. So this one, as tested at #1 Cochrane here, is right around 18,500. And I gotta say, this one is a really nice example. It's not perfect, but I mean, the Carfax is fantastic. I mean, there is like nothing but like regular oil changes, you know, totally clean, but very a well-maintained example for this one in particular. And this one's 77,000 miles, certainly below average for, you know, this, you know, most of these are going to be well over 100,000. And like I said, the VQ37 motor, I mean, I'm not an expert on it, but the consensus seems to be that it's very reliable, especially, you know, when you went for these later iterations from, I think, 2014 or 2015 and beyond. You know, all the main issues that were discovered with 360 Q70 were fixed, and you know, it just seems to be a very solid motor. It sounds like the V8 is also pretty solid, so again, probably a wash there too. But I mean, even scrolling through Auto Trader, I saw a lot of these with high miles that are still cruising, still doing well. And I mean, even going on, you know, forums and subreddits and stuff, seems like there's lots of people with high miles that just do mostly the regular maintenance, and that's about all these really need. So you know, really solid buy. And if you're interested in this one, by the way, Number One Cochrane has it for sale there. I will include a link in the description to check out all the info on it, and you can give them a call and check it out for yourself and see what you think about it. Now, as far as if you're not looking at this one in particular, but just Q70s in general, especially the L's, I mean, they're very, very affordable. They've come down so much and depreciated, as have basically everything else in this segment. You know, there's only two really, the Lexus LS and the Mercedes S-Class, that kind of held their value a little bit better than the norm for this segment, but I mean, everything else just plummets in value from their very high starting prices. But I mean, I've even seen some of these with higher miles, rougher ones, or older ones that aren't, you know, quite as new as this 2018. 2019, by the way, was the last model year, so this is the second to last model year for these. So if you go for like a 2015 or a 16 or something, and you go for one with, again, less equipment, since they were less well equipped back then, especially for the V6, you know, you can get some of those for, you know, 15 grand, even, you know, less. So it's a lot of car. And, you know, again, usually when we're talking about like the used German stuff, it's like, well, you're gonna have to pay a lot for maintenance. But with this, it doesn't seem like it really has that catch. There's no gotcha with these. It's just pretty reliable, pretty good. And yes, you know, your compromise, I guess, up front is that it's not as advanced as the Germans. It's probably not better in, you know, some of the ways, but you know, the trade-off is that this is a lot less complicated, and you know, you'll probably save yourself a good bit of money over, you know, taking a gamble on one of those higher mileage, older, you know, European vehicles. And so that's, I think, the real appeal and the real charm of this, and why Infinitis in general, especially used ones, are so sought after, because you get that great reliability at a huge savings, and you still get a very, very nice car. So as far as the competition, now there's a ton of competitors, and you know, it all comes down to exactly what you want and need and everything else. But you know, I have reviewed like a similar aged BMW 5 Series. They're very nice as well. I will say the ride is a little bit smoother. It's a little bit better handling. You know, you get all those little perks. But again, there could be some issues. Mechanically, those, depending on what engine you get and stuff, but they're pretty solid too. But it's just, you know, some of the more electrical gremlins that pop up in those compared to the Japanese stuff in my experience here, those have gotten to be a similar price tag. But you can even get like a 7 Series for this generation as well, which, you know, could have, again, some more complications, so maybe get an extended warranty if you can or something. But like, even those are super cheap, again, under 20 grand for a similar age and similar mileage and stuff, which is really wild, the amount of stuff you're able to get for under 20. You know, but some of the other underdogs that I like, you know, kind of shedding some light on, because everyone goes for the BMW or the Mercedes or whatever. But, you know, there's a lot of other really good options at this time point. You had the Cadillac CT6, which I adored. I had a couple of them for a week, the newer refresh one and the older pre-refresh. Those are fantastic. They did have Apple CarPlay. They had a fantastic, really impressive Bose stereo. I mean, this has a Bose stereo as well, but I don't think it's quite as impressive as that one was in that thing. It was one of the most mind-blowing audio experiences pre-2020, in my opinion. Really, really well done. So, you know, CT6 also, you can get one of those with a V6 for, you know, very similar money to this, and even slightly less in some cases. Again, nice large back seat, very grand, you know, Cadillac styling and all that. So that's another fantastic one. You also had the Genesis G80, which is very impressive, and before, you know, 2018 or so was called the Hyundai Genesis. That you could also get a V8 with, or a V6. You can get it with all-wheel drive, and they're fantastic, and also largely issue-free. I actually know someone that has one of those that's, you know, been driving it since 2015, no issues really that I know of, and just been, you know, really solid for him. So I mean, that's another fantastic option, under 20 grand, very luxurious. I'd say, I'd argue it's even maybe a little more plush and a little more prestigious than this even, but that's another fantastic choice. If you're okay with rear-wheel drive only, if you want to hunt one down, they're a little more rare, but there's the Kia K900, also very grand, and even a 2019, which has, you know, modern infotainment, has, you know, really impressive stuff. I actually reviewed one of those back when they were new. Those have even dropped under 20 grand. Another bargain you can get is there's even like the Jaguar XF, and even an XJ if you really want to go big, but XF was probably closer in size to this. Those are like under 15 grand even with comparable miles. And again, European stuff, it's a little more of a roll of the dice there, but you know, there's a lot of really great options at this, you know, very low price point. And especially again, if you're talking about the Infiniti, you get the perks of the Japanese stuff without having to pay the premium for the Lexus, because like the Lexus LS, those are still, for a comparable one to this, you know, going to be in the mid 20s. So this is a nice discount over those, and so I think it kind of is a good happy medium of, you know, giving you all the perks of those larger luxury sedans that maybe will cost you more on maintenance and stuff, but not, you know, charging you the extra for, you know, the Lexus. And so I think this is really a nice niche that it's carved out for itself here on the used market. And again, there's not a ton of them out there, but if you know, are willing to find one and, you know, go to where these are, you know, it's a really cool car and a very nice option. I'm glad that Infiniti offered it for as long as they did. It's a shame we don't have any modern equivalent here, but you know, it's yeah, just a very cool thing they stuck with. And just, you know, even back then, the idea that, hey, let's just like stretch it 6 inches, make the rear door extra long, and then we got ourselves a pseudo full-size entry in the segment. Like, no one does that anymore. You know, it's, oh, well, it's too hard, we have to do it properly in this. Instead, they're just like, yeah, let's stretch it out and make it happen. And they made it happen, and I love that. Just, you know, I kind of miss some of those simpler things when things didn't have to be so complicated. But anyway, yeah, overall really like the Q70L here, and huge thanks once again to #1 Cochran for providing me here with this unicorn to review for you guys today. Let me know your thoughts on the Q70L in the comments below. Thank you all very much for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe to keep these videos coming, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.